Antony. I'm a learning and development specialist by profession, a journalist by qualification, and a learner by passion. I've got roughly around 9 years of experience within the IT and ITS space across India. Currently, I am based in Trivandrum, however, my hometown is Thrissur. Now, before I start, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Skillmap for coming up with such an amazing initiative during this lockdown period, where we discuss ideas when it comes to rebuilding India. The theme is one of the most relevant topics which we can discuss at this point. I know it is not something which we get to hear a lot in the media, but definitely this is an amazing initiative by Skillmap, who has been into the training industry for quite a long time. Now, having said that, not a lot of us or a lot of people around are fans when it comes to the year 2020. Now, there are multiple reasons for this. Obviously, it did not go as how we planned, and we human beings are known to plan things. So that's the reason when I came across this topic of we shall overcome, rebuilding India, I had to sit and think. To understand what would add value. Now, I've got an opportunity. How can I add some value to the conversation which is already going to be here? Now, when do you rebuild something? When it is not fine, when it is not working perfect, when there are concerns, when there are challenges, that is when you go ahead and rebuild, or something which is broken. But right now, is India broken? Now, this is where we'll have to start understanding the entire concept of Rebuild India, which has become more of a hashtag usage across the last 2 to 3 months, I would say. Now, for this reason, I'm here to talk about a different perspective. I would like to approach this from a different paradigm altogether. So, when it comes to my talk today, I have titled my talk as Rebuilding Ourselves to Rebuild India. Because throughout my experience, one thing that I've learned, one thing that I've understood is the fact that you need to build yourself. You need to understand yourself before you venture or before you get into any other aspect of helping or adding value. So I'll try to use the next 15 to 20 minutes to talk about some of my thoughts when it comes to the situation that we are in, how we can kind of work around with it, and what is the best we as individuals can do to rebuild, or rather add value to this entire conversation. I wouldn't want you to believe all that I've got to say. That's not the idea. So without further ado, let's travel a bit to the past. Now, the past is where it all started. On the 24th of March, our Honorable Prime Minister, taking into consideration the seriousness of the situation that was there, declared 21 days of lockdown. Now, this was also the time when I had returned from work, if I remember right. And we were like, okay, 21 days. Maybe it should be contained in this 21 days. Day 1, fun and frolic, spending time with family, all went quite well. Day 2, almost similar. Day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7. So that's a week. Now the reality started kicking in. Till that point, I was a person who could not spend a lot of time with my family because of the nature of the work, because of the kind of rotational shift that I used to work in. A couple of reasons. Now that went on. The numbers started increasing. We started seeing patients with corona, irrespective of the city we are in, irrespective of the village we are in. It started entering our, I would call it more of the neighborhood. Now, this is where that reality kicks in. Now, human beings as an entire species is way different from the rest. One of the major differences that I've noticed is the fact that when it comes to human beings, when someone says there is a change, without even understanding what the change is meant for, what the change is for, our innate behavior is to resist change. Because we are a species which was quite comfortable. We were in our comfort zone. We were happy with the way things were. All of a sudden, someone says, okay, tomorrow things are going to change. The first thing most of the human beings are going to do is resist. So when I spoke to a couple of my friends, because that's the only thing we could do at that stage, because there was a campaign released in the state of Kerala called as SMS. It was quite an interesting one. Then we had Break the Chain. Very powerful campaigns, very powerful words used. And yes, in the initial stages, the campaign did do justice to all what it was saying. Everyone started following it to the letter. And today, that is what I believe is one of the reasons why we still have got comparatively lesser numbers in the entire country. I don't want to move this into a state bragging match. That's not the idea. It's just putting facts in perspective, and that's what we would like to do in a conversation like this. So I was talking about the entire concept of change. Now we are, or majority of us are resistant to change. Change is not something which we are very happy with. Change. Now we would have to understand why we are not happy with change. Did we try understanding what the change is? Now this was more like it was a forced change. But the reality is, over that single night, we started adapting to that change. We started complying to that change because our health was at risk. Till that day, people did not speak about sanitizers. People did not speak about masks. Maybe in some of the cities where the pollution level was extremely high. That's the only place where people spoke about pollution masks or even using a face mask. Story changed. People started searching for sanitizers, and I was no different. I went to most of the supermarkets, ransacked. And this is where that entire concept of panic purchasing comes into picture. Someone has started spreading false news. I wouldn't call it rumors because some of it was substantiated as well. There's a possibility there's going to be a lockdown. So this is a day before even our Prime Minister spoke about lockdown. There might be situations where food is going to be over. Literally, you might not get your groceries. You might not get your medicines. I went about because I've got a 1-year-old kid at home. I tried to stock all the necessary medicines. I bought a couple of bottles of hand wash. I got some Dettol antiseptic liquid. Possibly anything and everything that normally at that point I could think of. Now from there things started changing. Things started changing drastically. So people started taking things seriously. You could only go out on a very particular day. Even if you're going out, you need to have all those precautions. You need to have a letter written, more like an affidavit, where you have already attested saying this is how it is, this is why you're going out, this is the date, this is the time. And it was almost like I was literally living the scenes of a Hollywood movie. A boundary of my district is closed. People cannot move. This was a concept which was never heard of. At least 30 years or 31 years in my life, I've never heard of a situation, maybe a 144, a hartal, brief 12 hours, 24 hours. But what you're talking about here is even bigger. So as I told you, I'm from Thrissur. Now I started getting worried because I've got my elderly parents at home. They are the only ones at home. And when I speak to them, they're like, how's the situation there? And then every day the news was about numbers. The news was just about numbers. 256, 352, 176, different numbers. And what were these numbers? These were the numbers in the state. India, 1,000, 1,200, 1,300, 1,400. Okay, things aren't looking that rosy. Things aren't looking that promising at all. And that is where the entire thing changes now. People, sections of the society started getting affected. 7 days, no job, daily wage workers, household helpers, maids, a lot of them, they started finding it difficult to survive. Cab drivers. Everything changed. Everything changed. Literally, the only thing we could do during those times was stand and watch things change. That day I realized something very important and very pertinent here. That is, if a situation demands, if there's a circumstance, human beings can change. Human beings can be compliant. They can change to a level which you cannot even dream of. That's how it was. Now, some of my friends did tell me that, you know what, Nevin, this is going to change. Everything is going to be business as usual. Life is going to be life as usual. I was slightly skeptical. The reason I was skeptical is, as an individual, I spent some amount of time trying to listen to world news, not Indian news, and I'll tell you why as we proceed. So there were certain countries which was battling it. Greece, the numbers were going up. Brazil was going up. They were dumping human remains or mortal remains of human beings in trucks. I was like, this is a very serious situation. I'm blessed. I'm still alive. My family is safe. This was the thought which was going through my mind. The intensity was not that great. Now, a few days, second week, third week. Within 3 weeks, organizations realized that we will have to find offices within the homes of our employees. They did all what was necessary. They did all that was necessary to ensure that it was taken care of. Within a week's time, most of the organizations which has never even heard of a concept of work from home, they went from 0% employees working from home to an amazing 75 to 80% work from home. They got the required approvals because in Technopark, this is another understanding people might not have. Technopark is not all about techies. We are not all techies. There are a set of people. There are software developers. There are business processing outsourcing specialists. We have got people who work with contact centers. We have got people who are into content work. We have got people who are into a lot of creative areas as well. Now, this is where things changed. People started thinking, asking questions. Oh, lucky you, work from home. It was a very difficult concept for me to digest personally. I'll tell you why it was difficult. As I told you, I'm a learning and development specialist. I'm a corporate trainer. Now, my nature of job is I have to interact with people. I talk to people, I train them, I need to see them to gauge whether they have understood. It was difficult. But then we had to adapt to the new normal. Was I ready for it? No, I was not. Like the entire nation, I was not ready for it. Did I consider myself to be a large boulder? I did not. Because I always believe change is always like flowing river or a flowing water body. You can stand as the boulder. Trust me, nothing would happen. The water would flow. You would be where you are. If the power of the current is really strong, if the water is with a lot of force, there's a good possibility the boulder would move along with it. Now, this is where I would like to kind of talk about a few aspects of how we look at change. Whenever we come across change, a couple of things that I normally ask is there anything that I can control in this? Is there anything that I can do to ensure that there is some amount of control that I can exert? There is some amount of influence that I can use to ensure that I can resist the change. I'm trying to stop this change. But in this case, there was nothing. Then what is my next option? For a long time, I have been an ardent practitioner of a concept which I have discovered and which has helped me a lot. And that is what I'm going to share today. If you cannot control the outcomes, if you know for a fact there is nothing which is in your control, then you need to be ready to fail. Now I know this is going to be shocking. Failure is definitely not there in our diction. Failure is not something that we would want to hear from anyone. Because in our school days we were taught failure is not a great thing. Later it started becoming more like failure is the stepping stone to success and all those things. But the fail that I have got to speak here is way different. It's way different. Now, because of the situation, a lot of people whom I knew who were really strong, they started going into a mode of isolation. Their life was all about news. Their life was more about binge watching. Some of them started working, but they're not working to the productive levels which they normally used to do when they were in an organization. It was becoming a very difficult situation. People started asking, do you think that we will go back to the normal we were in, where I used to hang out with my friends at 4 p.m. at office, have a cup of tea or coffee from one of those cafeterias, discuss, talk. Now everything was remote. My entire world became virtual. A virtual world is not something that I want to live in. I'm a human being. I need to be present in the real world. And that real world was completely disappearing. Everyone was talking about WebEx, Zoom, Google Meet, Hangout, WhatsApp calls. All these things were becoming a household usage. And in a way it was good. So I thought, okay, things are not going to change. Now it's time for me to see how I can survive this. Now I need to survive. Because if I don't survive, now there's a huge problem there. Possibly, if I overthink, I can get into depression. I can lose my entire motivation to even wake up the next day, which is a very difficult situation to be in when you've got a family which is dependent on you. When you start feeling, okay, you know what, nothing is going to change. The world has reached a point. This is what could be possibly the end of the world, which people were talking about. The so-called apocalypse, or the end, the complete destruction of humankind. I was almost getting there. But this is the point where I decided to fail. Don't get me wrong. Fail for me is you being flexible, you being adaptable, you being a person who can take initiative. And the last thing is you learning. So I thought, is it possible to do all this? Our entire world became virtual. I was not equipped to handle it. But I had to be flexible enough to accommodate this change. And over a period of time, things changed. Like most of my counterparts, most of my colleagues in the training industry, everyone started understanding the virtual world. How can we make those so-called learning experiences as interactive as possible on a virtual platform? Now, when you don't have the skill, when you don't have the right knowledge, what do? You go about asking, you go about Googling, because Google is there at your disposal today. And above all, you also ensure that you learn from the masters in it. Organizations were willing to invest. So every day, 6 p.m., the Honorable Chief Minister of Kerala would come and start giving a set of numbers. Numbers looks good. I would be more interested in two places. One is the city called Trivandrum. The second is the city called Thrissur, my hometown and the base where I am in. I started learning. Now I had to start experimenting because now I knew that it is possible to do training virtually. It was a mind block. It was a huge mind block. Trust me, it was a huge mind block. I was having a conversation with one of my mentors, and my mentor was like, how are you finding this new normal? I was like, what is normal about this new situation? Nothing is normal. The only good thing that I could see in this entire piece was I could spend a lot of quality time with my 1-year-old son, which was good, which was amazing. He got to see his dad almost every now and then. He would walk into all my meetings. It was a reality, and people started living with that reality. There was nothing much we could do about it. So remember I told you about faith. So you need to be flexible, you need to be adaptable, you need to take initiative, you need to learn. I started following this. I started talking about this to a couple of my friends. They said, what's the harm in it? Let's give it a try. So band of us, we started having conversations daily. We started reskilling, upskilling to ensure that we stay relevant. We did not want to be the dinosaur in this era. Now this is where I love to call myself an optimistic person. I don't believe in imparting motivation to anyone. I don't believe in inspiring anyone, because trust me, unless and until it comes from within you, there is no point. No one can motivate you, no one can inspire you. So that's something which I believe in. This is a beautiful quote by Albert Einstein, who says something on the lines of, in every adversity there's an opportunity. It's like, wow, he makes sense. There is an opportunity, there is an adversity. We'll have to look at it. So that's how it's going to work. So on the lines of that, this is where we moved on. Our stories changed. We became natives of the new normal. We became the virtual ones. From there, I started observing people around me, because I'm a human being. I'm not an island. I don't work in solo. I work with the community around me. The news was really depressing. And that's where I came across certain interesting stories which talked about people who either they had lost their job. Now I'll tell you why these were interesting as well. These were people who had lost their job because of the layoffs, the cut downs, the ramp downs, whatsoever. These were the people who were trying to meet their lives, both ends. Some of them who were daily wage workers. Some of them who were a huge support to a lot of people like us. Let's say a family household where both the partners are working. That's not easy for them to return after various shifts and do a lot of things. Because 9 hours a job, you return home, you're almost dead. You just want to lie down. And there were times when these amazing people supported you in the form of a cook, in the form of a person who used to take care of your son or daughter. A lot of these things did happen. Now things changed. Now, how did things change? The first story that I read is of a household maid in Bangalore. If I remember the person's name, it's Ansuya Amma. 20 years, Ansuya Amma is a person who was working with 10 or 11 households. But during the lockdown, things changed. Ansuya Amma did not have a job. Now, Ansuya Amma's husband was a person who was more of a cab driver. Now, Ansuya Amma's husband also did not have a job. Now, this is the reality. My reality, their reality. It was way different. It was what you call as poles apart. But the reality here is, Ansuyamma's reality was also an awakening call for her. What she did was nothing short of a feat, nothing short of an amazing story to be written as the most inspiring story that I've read. Now, you would ask, what was so great about it? Ansuyamma had two daughters who were married, and as majority of the Indian system goes, they had to take a loan to get both their daughters married, and they were due to pay their installments or their EMIs. Ansuyamma was already at a stage where she could not get any more of loans. Ansuyamma calls up one of those households, a young couple, and says, "My husband does not have a job. I'm finding it really difficult. I'm almost at the end. I'm at that stage where I don't know what to do anymore. After a lot of thought, my husband and I, we have decided it's time for us to think of a change." Now remember the word, it's called change. Okay, so the household person, so she did listen to it. She said, "Okay, what are you thinking of?" Ansuyamma, what she asked was, "Can I get 10,000 rupees to kickstart my life?" Can you imagine kickstarting your life back with 10,000 rupees? But that's what she asked for. And somehow she did cough up somewhere around 25,000 extra. So in total, she has got roughly around 35,000. Now, Ansuyamma, 35,000. She, after the initial lockdown period was over, in the city of Bangalore, she decided to switch her career. Now, her husband, before being a cab driver, he used to work in a restaurant. Not a fancy one, but definitely he knew how to cook. He knew what was different. Now, I learned cooking during the entire lockdown season, thank God. So sometimes I feel this lockdown was more of a learning period for me. So Ansuyamma took this entire story, took it away. Long story short, they started a bhaji stall, a bonda bhaji stall. Now, Ansuyamma did not know about technology. She spoke to another one of those households where she had a relatively younger family, and they helped her with a smartphone, and they gave her an idea of this entire concept of digital payment. Ansuyamma learned it. Now, Ansuyamma did not make profits. Ansuyamma started when the lockdown was over, and now Ansuyamma can survive. She has brought her life back. Both her husband and her, both of them are working now. If you ask me, are they earning lots? Definitely not. But what they're doing right now is changing the story. So I thought this was just about that place. Then I came across a person from Maharashtra, from a district called Beed. A 12th grade person, a person who has just completed 12th, who worked with an IT giant for almost 10 years as a clerk or as an office administration person. And this lockdown, before the lockdown, he decided he needs to do something different. Lockdown was the perfect time for him. From a cattle shed, he, along with 3 other members, launched something similar to what is called as Canva. Canva is this amazing online platform where you can do a lot of graphic design, you can create magazines. He created something called as Doodle Graph, something on those lines. So because it was working out of a cattle stall, people were interested. The youths around, students who are in 12th standard, students who have just completed 12th, they came to him asking, "Can you teach us something about this?" Now, they had to have software experts, they need to have design experts, and trust me, this person was nowhere close to that. But he had that will. And what he did is, he gave it to them. He taught them. He trained them. They started working together. Now, this is the second person. Now, third person is a person from Tamil Nadu, a 61-year-old person. Now, imagine 61-year-old. When Corona struck, he started thinking, what can I do? Now, he's an engineer. He's more of a, I would say, a person who I would like to consider as a solution creator or a problem solver. That's what I was looking for. So this is that person who went ahead and he created something called hypo. Hypo is sodium hypochlorite, which is used to disinfect. And he wanted to do something. He wanted to give his knowledge, try to help people in his city to stay safe. And he did this. And how did he do it? He created one of those instruments which worked completely on solar. Sun's energy, renewable. Normally when the rest of the couple of these things were working with non-renewable source of energy, he created something out of solar. Now these are people who have achieved things during a lockdown. These are people who have achieved things during lockdown. Now there was a doctor in Delhi. Now this doctor in Delhi, when he saw the number of cases in Delhi rise, he, along with a band of other doctors, decided it's time that we do something. We do something about this. We are doctors. Doctors have got all the ability to control. Remember, it's control the situation. And how do we do it? We can treat people. But for that, we need to do something about it. Now, this is where they made an amazing change. The Commonwealth game complex which was available, they converted it into a 500-bed hospital treatment center over a period of a week. What did they do? They took the initiative for it. They took the initiative for it. Ansuyamma was looking at the flexibility aspect and the adaptability. The doctors decided to take the initiative for it. And the person from Maharashtra, he had the flair to learn, the flair to experiment. Now, this is not all. Trust me, if you look around, for me, motivation is the fuel which drives my entire vehicle, what I would call as my personality. If my car does not have petrol or gasoline in it, sorry to say, it is not going to go anywhere. So, motivation for me is something which comes from within, and that comes in when I can relate to someone's situation. That's where I get motivated. That's where I get inspired. And that's where I started believing I can only talk to people. If they can relate to things, they can get inspired. They can get motivated. But I cannot say I'm responsible for their motivation. I don't believe in people who scream saying, let me go ahead and motivate you. That's not the idea. That is definitely not the idea here. Sometimes motivation is what you will have to look around you. If an Ansuya Amma in Bangalore can do it, if an Elangovan in Chennai can do it, if Anubhav Gulati, I believe that's his name, he's a lawyer, he was one person who said, free of cost, if any hospital denies you treatment during COVID, approach me, I'll get you justice. If he can do it, if people like this can change, I'm sure we have got a lot more to offer. We have got a lot more to offer. These are just a few stories. Now, do you think this is about age? The first person I spoke about is roughly around 40s. The second person is in 60s. The other person is a youth. Now I have got the story of a 9-year-old child. 9-year-old child who decides to use the lockdown to build or to make agricultural produce in the backyards. She, along with her father, her mother, they cultivate and they did not sell it. What she did is she realized there is a community which needs my support at this point. There's a community which needs my support at this point. She started handing this over to people who she felt did not have access to all this. Now, this is a period. This is a time where things have changed. Today, learning is free. All those expensive courses are right at your fingertips. We as a community, today we have got a lot to offer. If we can rebuild ourselves, if we can initiate, if we can take initiative, if we can start doing things with the belief that even if I can touch or reach to one person in a community, let's try it. If we all have got the thought process in us, I'm not talking about giving money. That is not it. We all have got knowledge. I'm sure most of the people who are watching me right now has got knowledge. I'm a trainer. I can train people. I can talk to people. I can help them with a lot of things. Am I willing to give it? Yes, I'm willing to give it. And that's what I want with everyone. People who are experts in blockchain, people who are experts in artificial intelligence, machine learning, software coding. Is it just the privilege of an upper middle class family that their child who is in 7th standard can go for coding? Then that is not rebuilding India. If you want to talk about rebuilding India, it starts from this point where we start taking initiatives, we start leveling this playing field. Let's all start taking initiative to give to at least 3 people who you believe can make a change. Now this is where the thing called the change comes in. We need to believe that we can give people something which can bring about change. This is exactly what we need to do with this opportunity that we have right in front of us. Building India, rebuilding India has to start from grassroots levels. And we have got this amazing ability to reskill, upskill, train, teach, inspire. Inspire in the way, showing this. All you need to be is empathetic. Understand what we can do to support them. These are those times where we as people can do a lot. Education has come to a point where it is accessible by everyone with the rider technology. Now, if we know the technology, can't we support them? Can't we ensure that we can give the best? We can. How much would it cost to get a person, a family or a household, a TV? I'm not talking about the 40-inch or the 60-inch. Let's talk about just a normal basic LED TV, 10,000 rupees, 12,000 rupees. 6 people, forget it. Let's talk about 12 people, like-minded people. If they can pull in, that's the change. That is where we start. And the next step is technology has brought us close. We are socially distant, but technology has brought us close. Let us leverage the technology. Let us start helping our folks around who we would call as who did not have equal access to all the resources that we had. Let's bring them up. Let's skill them. Let's give it to them. And trust me, they would be ever thankful. And if we can do this, if we can build capability in 6 people in a small area, this 6 people can definitely take it to another 12 people. This 12 people can take it to a lot more people. And that is how we start looking at a different way of rebuilding. We are not talking about rebuilding India by the infrastructure. Yes, that is an aspect of it. But we do not go through that situation where you need to rebuild the infrastructure. You need to build the human capital. That is where the entire concept is when it comes to rebuilding India. This is what it is for me. So having said this, we have come to a point where negative is the most soothing word. Positive is one of the most dreadliest words that you wouldn't want to hear in a day. We have come to a point where we are to say, gone are those days where united we stand, divided we fall. No, today it is just the opposite. Divided we stand, united we fall. And this is just about the social proximities. But as human beings, as fellow citizens, as people who live in the society, we are still connected. Technology has brought us ever closer than anyone could have dreamt. Every household has got some understanding of technology today because that's the only way they can survive. Now let's see how we can take this to the younger generation. 10 like-minded people. I have got a network of 500 people, out of which if I can get 10 people to work with me to give what we know to the people, I'm not talking about money, I'm talking about the knowledge that we have. If we can give it to the people there, trust me, this is where the things change. This is where you will have to start looking at that entire concept of we shall overcome. It's an amazing statement. We are a resilient community. We are a community which has survived. We have survived a lot more things than this. We will survive. That is there. That is there with us. We will survive. But to survive, we will have to also hold people close to us. Not physically, but in this entire journey of rebuilding. And that is the only time when we can talk about that fact that we shall overcome, we shall overcome. Hum honge kamyab, hum honge kamyab. That is that point where we say, मन में है विश्वास, पूरा है विश्वास, हम होंगे कामयाब एक दिन. And this is the thought of rebuilding India that I have, which is why I said, let's rebuild ourselves, motivate us, which only you can do, and then let's see what's the best we can do to ensure that we give the best of the best to our younger generation so that they are thankful and use this opportunity which is disguised as an adversity and take things forward. With that, I would like to take this opportunity to convey my humble gratitude and appreciation once again to the Skillmap team for arranging this, and to all those people who had spent listening to me. Thank you once again.